5 sinister cases exposed. Spine-chilling autopsies reveal terrifying secrets of a cursed family. Sarah Johnson kept her head down as she scurried past the break room during her late-night hospital shift. Whispers echoed, curling around the corners like tendrils of smoke. "Did you hear about the Ashfords?" one nurse murmured, her eyes wide as saucers. Sarah's heart raced. She'd heard the name before, but the context sent a chill down her spine. A cursed family? Bodies piling up? She leaned closer, drawn in despite her instincts screaming to walk away. 5 autopsies, all linked to that family. They say their house is haunted. Another nurse gasped, eyes darting nervously, as if the very walls had ears. Every atom in the room seemed to vibrate with palpable dread. It started simply enough. A faint humming deep in her bones, a sensation prickling at the base of her skull. Over her night shifts, she began to notice it. The quiet of the hospital suddenly felt charged with something unseen, heavy in the air like waiting lightning. She brushed it aside as fatigue, but a gnawing worry settled in her gut. 2 kids depended on her: 8-year-old Emily, with her boundless imagination, and 6-year-old Noah, who clung to her like a lifeline as she'd swipe through the autopsy reports. A thread of unease wove through her work. Death after death connected to the Ashfords. There was something undeniable about the patterns. Her mind raced their disappearance decades ago, clouded in superstitions and fear. Just old wives' tales, she told herself, but the whispers grew louder. Shadows danced outside her home at twilight. Just her imagination, she thought, but the tendrils of doubt wrapped around her like a serpent. Then, it happened. One evening, as she tucked Emily in, her daughter's innocent words made her blood run cold. "Mommy, I made a new friend. She says I can find treasure at the Ashford house when the moon is full." Panic surged through Sarah like ice water. A child's laughter echoed outside, a sing-song tune that danced with malevolence. Dark figures flitted past her window. Were they children or something else? Shaking, she tried to convince herself that the world around her was normal, just a neighborhood of smiling faces and well-manicured lawns. But the chill wouldn't leave. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each day grew darker, her neighbors' glances turning sharp as she mentioned the Ashfords, forbidding whispers exchanged like currency. The walls of her home began to feel suffocating. One night, a frantic knock startled her. As she swung the door open, she found an envelope, its parchment unusually cold. "Stay away from the Ashfords," it warned, the words barely legible, scrawled with a hurried hand. Her pulse thundered. Every instinct screamed for her to flee from the encroaching terror. And then, the laughter descended again. Children, specters with hollow eyes, appeared just beyond the pale light of her porch. They called her name, their voices intertwined with a sinister melody. She felt the floor begin to dissolve beneath her, cold sweats breaking out on her skin. As she stumbled backward in horror, she caught a glimpse of an old photograph hidden in her family album, a generational connection to the Ashfords that threatened to drown her whole family in a legacy of nightmares. With the shadows circling her closer, souls of an unknown past stirred, eager to reclaim their hold. Everything started to spiral. She realized the truth that haunted Maplewood was no longer just a whisper, but a looming presence, ready to consume her. As Sarah stumbled back, the photograph slipped from her fingers and fluttered to the floor, the faces in the sepia-toned image seeming to shimmer with an eerie life. It was a family portrait, her family. Only the Ashfords stood behind her. Their eyes bore into her, as if warning her of an unfathomable evil that lingered just beyond the light. The children's laughter grew louder, more insistent, twining with her frantic heartbeat. She felt the pull of their ghostly presence, a clawing desperation to lure her in. Her pulse raced as the shadows thickened, dark shapes merging with the night. Panic flared, igniting every nerve. She bolted into the safety of her home, slamming the door shut, but the whispers seeped through every crack. "Mommy, can I go play?" Emily's voice chimed from the living room, bright and innocent, a contrast to the suffocating darkness around Sarah. She turned, eyes wide, feeling dizzy, caught between dread and disbelief. "Stay away from the Ashfords." She barely heard herself cry as she rushed to her daughter. She found Emily at the window, her small hands pressed against the glass, transfixed by something outside. "Look, Mommy, the kids are playing." She pointed to the twisted trees beyond their yard, to the shadows flitting and spinning around the trunks. Sarah's stomach lurched. Frozen in fear, she moved closer, heart racing. Noah stood beside Emily, his cherubic face pale, eyes glossed over in a trance. "Not those kids, Emily," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "They're not real." She grabbed her daughter roughly, pulling her away from the sight. But a sudden breath of cold air crept in as the window cracked open, the chilling laughter spilling inside like a vile mist. "Let us go, Mommy," Emily shouted, pulling at her arm. Her daughter's fervor ignited something deep within Sarah, and for a fleeting moment, she saw past the horror. "We can find the treasure. They said we could." Another laugh erupted from the void outside, and with it came an unmistakable darkness that wrapped around them. "No, we will not go." She pulled Emily even closer, feeling the warm weight of childhood cling to her. Then a thought struck: what if the connection to the Ashfords was deeper than just whispers or shadows? Her family had ties, blood ties, that stretched into this cursed history. If she didn't protect her children, they could be swept away, just like those before them. A loud knock shattered the tension, sending both kids jumping. "Sarah, open up. It's Mike." Her neighbor's familiar voice fractured the silence. Relief washed over her like a balm, but wariness clung to her heart. What if he carried warnings too? What if she was put in danger just by knowing him? "Mommy, the kids are still outside," Emily cried, voice muffled, still fascinated by the gathering shadows. Sarah turned, fighting the growing dread. They were watching. She could feel the weight of their gaze, the invisible thread binding them to her past. "Mommy!" Noah screamed suddenly, pointing at the window. "They're coming in." She felt the walls closing in. The laughter crescendoed, and once more, they called her name, sweet, taunting. "Sarah, open the door." Mike's voice rang desperate, filled with urgency as she fumbled for the lock, heart pounding against her ribs like a drum. Outside, the shadows shifted. She could swear she saw outlines forming, children's faces emerging from the darkness, fragmented memories slipping into view. "Your choice?" a voice whispered from the shadows. Fate hung heavy in the air as she wrestled with a decision that could doom or save them. Would opening the door usher in salvation, or unleash the full terror of the Ashford curse? Sarah stood frozen, trapped between two worlds, a faint light flickering in the distance and darkness pressing closer. She had only moments to decide, before a deafening crack shattered the stillness, revealing what had always lurked just beneath the surface. What would her choice unleash? The crack splintered the air, drawing Sarah's sharp breath to a halt. Chills raced down her spine, and she instinctively stepped back from the door as if it were a gaping maw ready to eat her alive. The shadows pooled like liquid night, weaving and curling around her ankles, whispering promises that felt both alluring and poisonous. "Mommy, open it," Emily shrilled, her bright voice cutting through the dark like a knife. Noah stood beside her, eyes wide, reflecting the horror Sarah felt residing in every fiber of her being. "Sarah, I'm worried." Mike's voice held a note of urgency she could scarcely ignore, yet fear gripped her soul in an iron fist. Each heartbeat roared in her ears. She wanted to scream, to cry, to run somewhere, anywhere, but she had to protect her children. "No, no, no," she muttered under her breath, torn by the conflicting desires of safety and fear. The laughter outside twisted, mingling with the cries of her children. "They're just children." A voice slithered from the shadows, dark and velvety, caressing her mind as if it were a loved one she had lost long ago. Join us, feel the joy of play. The door rattled again, louder this time as Mike banged his fist against it. Let me in, Sarah. It's not safe. The indecision clawed at her. She could hear the creaking of the old house, the sound of wood splintering slightly under the weight of her panic. She glanced towards her kids, and even in that moment of peril, Emily still looked eager, enthralled by the chaos swirling outside, as if it held secrets sweeter than candy. Mommy, she called, but something had shifted. The shadows seemed to thrum with energy, pulsating in time with her heartbeat. They were inviting. No, they were more than that. They were demanding. Gritting her teeth, Sarah moved toward the window, heart racing. She needed to know. Tugging Emily back slightly, she peered through the glass, bracing herself for the horrors yet to be revealed. But nothing prepared her for the sight that met her gaze. The shadowy figures had solidified into shape young children, their faces distorted and pale, their eyes hollow, dark voids that drew her in. Come and play, they chorused in unison, and the sound twisted her insides. It felt familiar, woven into the very fabric of her blood. This was her family's legacy. The Ashford curse that flowed through her veins cried out, resonating with the laughter of the lost. How could she refuse? How could she turn her back on the call? Sarah. There was desperation now in Mike's voice, urging her to break the spell, to save her children. But visions danced in her mind. Summers in the sun, laughter echoing, carefree days, all of that lost because of who she had been, buried in ash and guilt. Mommy, please. Noah's voice broke through her reverie. Horror etched across his face as he looked back at her. The pull of the shadows fought against her love, a darkness she hadn't anticipated. Hold on, she shouted, then slammed her eyes shut. She couldn't let the memories drown her. Not now. God, please. She turned back to the door, heart racing, and for the first time, she could feel the energy of that dark presence. It clawed at her, demanding entry, demanding to be acknowledged. With shaky hands, she reached for the doorknob, breath shallow and rapid. This was the moment where all decisions intertwine, fate ready to dip its hands into the river of time. Mommy, don't. Emily's scream rang out, woven with pure terror. Suddenly, amidst the cacophony, a scream shattered the air, one that didn't belong to her kids. The front door cracked as if it were made of paper, and then everything froze. The question whispered through the silence, heavy and foreboding. What had they unleashed? And in that heartbeat, real terror surged forth, threatening to engulf everything in its path. The door splintered apart with a sickening crack, spilling an inky darkness into the house. Sarah stumbled back as the shadows seeped through, writhing like smoke. They danced around her feet, pulling her into their abyss. Panic sparked a fire beneath her skin. Get back, she shouted, her voice trembling. But the shadows were hungry, whispering her name in dulcet tones that promised relief and release. Mommy, please. Emily's voice pierced through the haze, each syllable thick with fear. Sarah turned to see Noah gripping Emily's arm, wide-eyed and pale. She felt the weight of their terror settling on her soul, grounding her when the shadows threatened to lift her away. Stay close, she started, but her words caught in her throat as the laughter outside surged like a tidal wave, crashing against the walls. It warped into something grotesque, a cacophony of joy twisted into malice. The children in the yard, the lost souls crying out for release, began to swirl as one, merging into a singular mass of despair. Mommy, open the door, they cried, and for a moment, she felt her resolve waver. Something in her heart echoed back to them. Treacherous memories flickered like a dying candle, a childhood she had buried deep within her heart. Would giving in truly be their salvation? Sarah, please, you need to think. Mike's voice yanked her back to the present. His face was pressed against the splintered wood, eyes pleading, every line etched with fear. He knew the darkness better than anyone. As the shadows encroached, she was faced with a choice. Surrender the children to their fate, or face the dark alone. The very air felt electric, humming with the weight of their collective fears. Sarah. The whispering darkness beckoned again, soft and seductive. Join us. They can be free. You can be free. Her heart thudded painfully as visions of her children playing, unfettered by the heavy chains of tragedy, flashed in her mind. And yet, the frightening truth loomed ever closer. There would be no return. Each step deeper into the shadows would mean leaving behind the ones she loved. In a moment of clarity, the glint of an old silver key on a nearby table caught her eye. The promise of safety. She lunged for it, heart racing, adrenaline flooding her veins. Just as her fingers closed around the cold metal, the door yawned wide, an unstoppable force forcing her to the ground as an unseen current filled the space. The creatures outside moved forward, a swirling tide of lost innocence crashing into the threshold. Sarah staggered to her feet, key in hand, but doubt gripped her like a vice. "Mommy, don't leave us." Emily's terror-stricken visage tore through her soul. The shadowy figures surged into the room, an overwhelming wave of despair that squeezed around her like a vice. She knew she had seconds to decide. Would she protect her children or join the darkness like so many that had come before her? With a deep breath, Sarah raised the key, shouting over the sound of cries and laughter that drowned her senses. "I won't let you take them." But the shadows merely laughed, a sound like breaking glass, sharp and piercing. They were more than nothing, more than a cursed legacy. They were relentless. Just then, an explosion rocked the house, sending her sprawling back into the room. The shadows recoiled, shimmering and twisting as if afraid of something beyond the door. Sarah's pulse raced. Could it be? "Mommy, what was that?" Noah screamed, pulling Emily closer. "Stay here," she yelled, scrambling to the door. As she flung it wide open, air rushed in, and with it, the acrid scent of smoke and something fouler lurking beneath. A figure shuffled into the doorway, shrouded in darkness, its face hidden. "Let me in," it rasped, voice gravelly like wind through a graveyard. Terror clawed at Sarah's throat, and as she hesitated, the shadows surged forward, screeching in furious unity. Would this new terror save them or swallow them whole? In that breathless moment, Sarah knew the darkness still held secrets. She took a step back, heart pounding a question on her lips. She was too afraid to voice. What else was waiting out there in the night? The door creaked ominously as Sarah glanced back at her children. The shadows surged behind her, a hissing tide of lost voices, clamoring in a frenzy to claim what they were denied. The figure at the threshold remained obscured, shifting like smoke, but its presence chilled her blood. "Sarah, don't." Mike's voice cut through the chaos, urgent and panicked. "We don't know what that is." "Please." It was a whisper, hesitant and shaky. The figure's form flickered, its outlines changing before her eyes, as if it were a mirage caught between realities. "Mommy!" Emily's cry shattered Sarah momentarily, pulling her gaze back to the children. Their small hands reached out, grasping at the air, despair pooling in their wide eyes. She couldn't let them see her fear. With a thunderous roar, the shadows lunged forward, and time felt as if it had stopped for just an instant. "Get inside," the figure hissed, a command that paralyzed her. Felt like a trap, a dark promise too close for comfort. But somehow, it also beckoned a chance to escape the wrath of the swirling despair that threatened the very fabric of their existence. Sarah could feel the darkness wrapping around her legs, as if they sought to drag her under. She tightened her grip on the key, the cold metal a stark reminder of hope. With a swift movement, she turned back to the figure. "Who are you?" Her voice trembled, steadying slightly despite the weight of fear pulling at her. "I am your salvation," the figure rasped. The wind picked up around it, picking up the sickening scent of decay. "Let me in, and the children will be safe from the darkness." Lies. Dubious, twisted words meant to ensnare like a spider's web. But the shadows wailed, an anguished chorus of voices echoing that they had something to offer too. Sarah hesitated, a battle raging inside her. "Choose, Sarah." It was Mike's plea that anchored her confusion. "Protect them. Don't fall for its lies." Just then, A deafening crash shattered the air. The walls trembled as if the house itself wanted to recoil from the figure. The shadows screeched, a cacophony of desperate souls intertwined. Sarah turned, instincts roaring within her. "Mommy, please." The terror in Noah's voice ignited her resolve. Without thinking, Sarah stepped forward, her heart racing. "No," she shouted, flinging the key at the figure, her hand shaking. The key sailed through the air, colliding with the dark form, but it merely dissolved into a cloud of shadows, vanishing into the void. "Foolish woman," the figure's voice dripped with venomous disdain. "You think you can resist forever? We are inevitable." The shadows surged, an army of despair washing over Sarah, pulling her breath from her lungs. Panic erupted as she felt Emily's hand slip from hers, the child's small body being tugged towards the dark pit of horror beyond. "Emily!" With desperation, Sarah lunged forward, her body colliding with the shadows. The darkness writhed against her touch, a sensation so cold it threatened to swallow her whole. She clawed at the air, reaching for her child. But the laughter grew louder, echoing in her ears like a terrible siren. And then she saw it, a faint glimmer, light flickering just beyond the shadows, a wave of warmth that felt impossibly inviting. Was it a way out? A distraction? With all the strength she had, Sarah extended an arm, screaming, "Emily! Come back! Mommy!" Emily's face twisted in sheer terror as the shadows tugged her, fingers clawing around her. "Hold on!" Sarah yelled, rushing forward with reckless abandon. She could sense the boundaries shifting, the darkness recoiling from her advancing light. She would either save them or succumb to the encroaching void. But life doesn't always go as planned. The moment her fingertips brushed against Emily's wrist, a deafening silence cloaked them. Time froze, and the shadows circled an ominous barrier, trapping them in the balance between existence and oblivion. "Together!" she screamed, and just as they made contact, a brilliant flash erupted, blindsiding them both. When the light faded, they were gone, and all that remained was the taste of dread in the air. What had she unleashed? Would the darkness come for them now, or would it finally release its grip? The house groaned, anticipating the next move in a game that had only just begun. The world swam into focus slowly, as if emerging from murky depths. Sarah blinked hard, trying to shake off the heavy haze. Everything felt off. The air was thick, suffused with an acrid odor reminiscent of burnt rubber. She pushed herself upright, panic gripping her as memories clawed at her mind. Emily. Where was Emily? "Mom?" A small voice whimpered. Relief flooded through her, but it was short-lived. Emily sat against a stark white wall, trembling, her eyes wide with fear. "Mommy, I don't like it here." Sarah rushed to her, her heart pounding. As she knelt beside her daughter, the shadows whispered just beyond the periphery of her vision. "We're okay," she reassured, though her own voice trembled. "We're safe." But were they? The walls were bare and sterile, devoid of any warmth. Light flickered overhead, a weak bulb, casting eerie shadows that danced dangerously close. Mike and Noah were nowhere to be found, and a creeping dread settled in the pit of her stomach. "Where are we?" she asked, feigning calm. I don't know," Emily stammered, tears glistening on her cheeks. I followed you, and then everything got dark." The child's words echoed in her mind, dark. The figure, the shadows, the sense of being trapped. Had they truly escaped, or had they entered another layer of horror? Sarah looked around frantically, but the sterile surroundings offered no answers. It was like stepping into a nightmare sculpted from the deepest fears of her mind. She placed a hand on Emily's shoulder, trying to anchor them both. "We need to find Mike and Noah." As she stood, the lights dimmed further. Shadows pooled at her feet, thick and swirling like a hungry fog. They encroached, creeping closer, inviting her to surrender to their unending despair. Sarah felt the familiar, icy tendrils of fear tightening around her throat. "Mommy!" Emily's voice sliced through the suffocating darkness. "They're coming." "Who's coming?" Sarah asked, but the answer was already evident in the way the shadows splintered and twisted, as if alive. The play of light morphed into grotesque figures, contorting into forms that unleashed her primal terror. Run! They dashed down the hall, the echo of their footsteps reverberating against the cold walls. Sarah could hear whispers, now voices swirling, overlapping, crying. The shadows were gaining ground, hungry for what they could not have. "Mom, I'm scared," Emily gasped, stumbling. "Stay close," Sarah shouted, gripping her daughter's hand tightly. But the grip of darkness was relentless, sinking beneath her skin as they raced into an opening that felt like an abyss. It expanded in all directions, endless and menacing. Suddenly, a figure loomed ahead, blocking their path. It was tall, cloaked in the same swirling shadows, but its features were illuminated by a sickly yellow glow. "Do you wish to remain?" it asked, voice echoing with a cruel delight that wrapped around Sarah like a vice. "Or will you embrace the darkness?" As the walls began to pulse and wail, Sarah felt Emily's grip weaken. Out of the corner of her eye, movement. Something slinked in the shadows, larger, darker. "Emily, run!" she screamed, pushing her daughter away from the figure. But as Sarah turned, she saw another shadow curling toward her. And then, "Mommy! Help!" The cry pierced the air as Emily slipped past the looming figure. Sarah lunged, but something caught her foot sharp and unyielding. She fell, grasping desperately at the walls that felt slick and alive. A single heartbeat echoed in her chest, reverberating amongst the cries. She turned, and from the shadows, twisted faces emerged, hollow eyes, skeletal grins, mouths open wide in a scream that froze her blood. Join us. Was there any hope left now? Or had they crossed a threshold from which there was no return? As terror swallowed her whole, the last thing she saw was the glimmer of Emily's terrified face before darkness closed in, leaving a chilling question lingering in the air. What had they truly awakened? Sarah fought against the darkness, clawing at the sensations that wanted to drag her under. She struggled to push the shadows back, to call out to Emily. Her hand still gripped something, someone. She felt a warmth against her fingers. A small body. "Emily," she gasped, pulling her daughter close. "Hold on to me." The darkness swirled around them, whipping like a storm. It whispered gruesome promises, pulling Sarah toward the abyss. But she couldn't give in, not now. She focused on Emily, who whimpered in response. "Mommy, I'm scared, I can't see. Just stay with me." Her words became fervent prayers as she shielded Emily, shielding them both from the clutches of despair. As if responding to her denial, the shadows hesitated, pulling back slightly, revealing a narrow passage. It was dim, lined with walls that pulsed with a sick rhythm. The neon glow emitted from the floors looked almost biological, like the surface of something alive and hungry. With no time to ponder, she gripped Emily's hand and took a step into the corridor. Felt like stepping into the mouth of a beast. The air turned colder, more biting, and the whispers transformed into faint, anguished cries. "Do you hear that?" Sarah asked, her throat dry and constricted. Emily nodded, her breath hitching. "It sounds like they're hurting. Keep moving." Sarah tugged at her, urgency compelling her forward. Each step echoed back, taunting them, a heartbeat measuring the distance between her and the horror behind them. They pressed on, transitioning between shafts of dim light and heavy dark, the flickering illuminating grotesque sketches crawling on the walls. Limbs, faces twisted in silent screams, remnants of souls lost. It sent chills racing down Sarah's spine. Which way was up? Where was the exit? Suddenly, they reached a room larger, filled with the faint whir of machines and a rancid aroma that clawed at her lungs. Steel tables lay scattered around, draped in grimy sheets. Sarah felt bile rise in her throat. This wasn't a safe haven. It was a mausoleum. "What is this place?" Emily asked, her soft voice trembling like a fragile leaf. "I don't know, sweetheart." A pang of desperation shot through Sarah. They needed to find a way out. "But we need to keep moving." Yet before they could leave, a chilling voice echoed from the shadows, deep and mocking. "Where are you going? You mustn't be so hasty. You've only just arrived." Out of the shadows emerged a figure, wreathed in the same sickening darkness. Its face was obscured, but its presence radiated a malevolence that paralyzed Sarah. "This is where they come to rest," it continued, its voice a slithering whisper. "You've entered a home where souls intertwine, where the living and the dead are never truly separated." "No, no," Sarah shouted, panic coursing through her veins. "We don't belong here. Do you think you can escape the truth?" The figure took a step forward, and the room trembled, shadows swirling angrily in response. "You're already part of the tapestry." Emily clutched Sarah's leg, terror-stricken. The figure extended a hand, shadow morphing into long bony fingers. "Embrace it. Join us. Run." Sarah yanked Emily's arm and bolted down another hallway. The darkness chased them, relentless and angry, walls throbbing as they went. "We have to find a way out." As Sarah sprinted, adrenaline coursed through her. But just when her hope surged, two paths branched out. One to the left shrouded in ominous silence, and the right pulsating with a chaotic energy, beckoning almost seductively. Which path would lead them to safety? The ground shook beneath their feet, the shadows beginning to encircle them once again. A scream echoed, followed by muffled cries that resonated off the walls. Time was running out. Would they choose the right path, or would they fall into a trap designed to ensnare them forever? With her heart pounding, she glanced at Emily, no longer hesitating. "Which way, Em?" But Emily's eyes were wide and glassy, lost in fear. "Mommy, what if we don't make it?" The weight of her daughter's question hung between them, a lost plea in the encroaching darkness. As shadows tightened their grip, Sarah could feel the painful pull of despair threatening to drag them down. The lingering words hung like a death sentence. "And if you choose poorly, you'll never escape." What awaited them beyond the unknown? Would they pay the ultimate price for a moment's hesitation? "Mommy, please," Emily cried, her small voice piercing through Sarah's panic. With the shadows hissing at their heels, Sarah couldn't delay any longer. "Hold my hand tight." With a deep breath, she yanked them to the right, where chaotic energy surged, crackling like static in the air. A faint light pulsed from the end of the corridor, enticing yet foreboding. As they dashed forward, the energy vibrated around them, almost alive, forcing Sarah to navigate through thick darkness that lashed out like frenzied claws. The shadows screeched in fury as they tore through the eerie glow, reaching for Sarah and Emily, desperate to pull them back. "Faster," Sarah urged, dragging Emily behind her. But the room's ceiling began to shift and twist, seemingly threatening to collapse. She glimpsed faces materializing within the moving walls. Hollow eyes filled with despair stared back at them. "Mommy," Emily whimpered. "They're watching. Just keep running." Gritting her teeth, Sarah pushed harder, each step echoing with agonizing dread. The pulse of the light ahead quickened her heart, promising a way out. Just a bit farther. Suddenly, a deafening roar erupted, shaking the ground beneath them. Sarah stumbled, pulling Emily close as the air churned with malice. "What's happening?" "Mommy!" Emily screamed and pointed. There, ahead, a massive figure began to materialize from the darkness. It loomed, its form shifting and writhing like a snake. Eyes, 1,000 of them, blinked in unison, tracking their every movement, filled with an insatiable hunger. "Turn back," the figure bellowed, its voice reverberating through the tunnel. "You don't belong in the light." Their feet faltered as confusion and fear gripped Sarah. What if the darkness was safer than the light? But there was no room for doubt now. This was a survival instinct. "Keep moving," she yelled, yanking Emily forward even as the weight of the creature's gaze attempted to pin them in place. Bursting into a narrow crevice, they tumbled into a chamber that smelled of rot and decay. It was a grotesque gallery. Remnants of past attempts to escape lay strewn across the floor. Bones, tattered clothes, and empty eyes watched them from every dark corner. Shadows carved out scenes of terror, remnants of families who had once been just like them. That's awful," Emily gasped, her voice trembling as she looked around. "Stay close." Sarah's voice was a desperate whisper. They had to find a door, an exit from this nightmare. But how could they when the memories of the lost haunted this place? In the center of the room, under flickering lights, sat a single door. Pulsing with the same sickly neon glow that had led them this way, it stood almost invitingly. But something felt distinctly wrong. The air grew thicker, charged with anticipation. "Mommy, what if it's a trap?" Emily's soft voice trembled but broke through the din of fear coursing through Sarah. "I don't know," Sarah replied, the uncertainty spiraling her thoughts. "But we can't stay here." Before she could act, the floor rippled. A low moan escaped the walls, and something unseen began to edge toward them. "Go now," Sarah screamed. She pushed Emily ahead of her, lungs heavy with dread, fear clawing at her throat. As they reached for the door, an icy hand closed around Sarah's ankle, yanking her back. She screamed as Emily cried out in terror, the darkness pooling closer. "Mommy! Run! Emily! Get through!" Sarah fought against the grip, terror flooding her veins. The shadows hissed, pulling at her, desperate to drag her into their depths. Emily stumbled, tears streaming down her face, her gaze flickering between her mother and the door. "Mommy, I can't leave you. Go, please." With a sob, Emily turned and dashed toward the pulsing glow, the shadows lunging after her, reaching for the flicker of warmth she was leaving behind. And then, a bright flash erupted as Emily flung herself through the door. It slammed shut behind her, plunging Sarah into darkness. The icy grip on her leg tightened, and she felt the darkness envelop her, pulling her down into an endless void. Panic surged through her. Had she lost her chance? "Wait," a voice echoed through the darkness. "Tell me, which path did you take?" The creeping dread settled thickly over her as she was pulled lower into the abyss, suffocating her hope. Was it worth the sacrifice? As her vision dimmed, a chilling thought echoed. If she couldn't escape, what fate awaited Emily alone in the other world? Would she ever find her daughter again? The darkness smothered Sarah, dragging her deeper into its cold embrace. She fought against it, heart racing, panic clawing at her chest like the relentless shadows still reaching for her. "Emily!" she cried, voice trembling and hoarse. But her words fell mute in the twisting void, swallowed whole by the insatiable darkness. Beneath her, she felt a surface forming, solid yet pulsing like a heartbeat. It throbbed with malignancy, alive in a way that sent tremors through her. Frantic, she searched for anything to grip, anything to anchor her. Suddenly, the world shifted. The pitch blackness lightened, revealing a dim, fluorescent glow. The door Emily had fled through. "Emily!" Sarah screamed again. The door shimmered, its edges flickering like a flame, almost beckoning her. But as she reached for it, she felt a force tugging her back, a truth she dreaded confronting. She was bound to this dark place, her flesh still caught in the grip of something both relentless and merciless. In desperation, she focused, wrestling her thoughts to find courage. "What do you want?" she shouted, thrusting her voice into the hollowed void. The air thickened, wrapping around her in ghostly tendrils. "Your need," a voice slithered back, echoing like a million whispers in her ear. "Your need binds you here. Let it go and you shall be free." Free? The word tasted bitter on her tongue. What does freedom cost? The voice snickered, the sound chilling her soul. "Everything you hold dear, everything you are." A wave of dizziness washed over Sarah. The faces pressed onto the walls shifted, twisting into anguished expressions that gnawed at her resolve. Desperate images of her daughter flooded her mind. Would Emily be safe? Would she even remember her mother? "Stay with me." A distant cry echoed Emily's strained voice, woven through the fabric of the dark. "I don't want to be alone." The haunting resonance cut through Sarah, spurring her to fight. She pulled against the force holding her, stretching her will against the inevitable pull of despair. "I will not let you take her," she shouted defiantly. The shadows recoiled, a sudden silence engulfing the abyss. It was so profound it nearly drowned her spirit. Yet Sarah pressed on, her resolve hardening. "If I have to sacrifice, let it be for my daughter." With a shuddering breath, She relaxed into the darkness, flowing into it as if surrendering. In that moment, a blinding light erupted, enveloping her in warmth, ripping through the cold fangs of despair. Sarah felt the icy grip fall away, and for an instant, she was free. But just as quickly, darkness lashed out, furious at her defiance. It crushed her new sense of hope like a fragile dream, and with a deafening roar, it pulled her deeper still. The door began to fade from view. "No!" Sarah screamed again, feeling the last remnants of light slip through her fingers like sand. "Emily!" The shadows laughed as they dragged her down. "You cannot save her, she is already lost." Suddenly, a thought pierced through the chaos, a glimmer of knowledge, an inkling of a path. "I can find her, I can bring her back." The laughter died, and all that remained was an unearthly stillness. "Find her? How?" The voice whispered, almost intrigued. As the oppressive weight intensified, Sarah felt a surge of instinct pulling her. "I will follow the light." The path she took, a flicker ignited in the darkness, vibrant and pulsating with Emily's essence. It beckoned her forward, drawing her near. With a powerful thrust of will, she lunged after it, heart racing, desperate to reunite with her daughter before she faded away into nothingness. But even as she propelled toward that flickering spark, an unsettling thought clawed at her mind. Was it truly Emily, or a cruel mirage, luring her deeper into the treacherous maw of shadows? As despair mingled with determination, the void swallowed her scream. Emily, would she find her daughter alive? Or was she chasing an illusion capable of sealing both their fates? In that split second, as shadows whispered deceit and beckoning, Sarah plunged into the light, a radiant glow that felt both alien and familiar. It filled her with warmth as she spiraled through the void, her body caught between the malevolence of shadows and the fragile light that clung to her essence. The world began to shimmer, transforming the darkness around her into a vivid landscape pulsating with colors that twisted and turned. Then, she landed hard. Sarah gasped, her breath hitching in her throat as she blinked against the brightness. She was sprawled on the hall floor of her old home, the very place where she had grown up. The walls that encased her were pristine, filled with laughter and echoes from ages ago. She pushed herself up, scanning for her daughter, panic clawing once again at her insides. "Emily!" The name tore from her lips, a fervent prayer echoing in this surreal space. She leapt to her feet and dashed through the rooms, each step echoing like the roar of a hurricane. Light spilled from the living room, spilling warmth in stark contrast to the icy grip of the shadows that had pursued her. She rushed in, breathless. And there, seated on the floor, Emily was coloring, her little hands moving carefully across the paper, bright crayons spanning all colors of the rainbow. "Mommy!" Emily looked up, beaming with pure, innocent joy as if the darkness had never touched them. Sarah felt her heart swell, tears brimming as she knelt before her daughter. "Thank God I found you." Without hesitation, Emily jumped up, wrapping her arms tightly around Sarah's neck. Relief washed over her, flooding her chest with gratitude. They were together. Stolen moments would follow, innocent laughter resounding through the hallways again. But doubt crept in, nagging like a wound that refused to heal. How had they escaped? Were they truly free from the shadowy arms that had chased them? "Emily!" Sarah pulled back, looking deep into her daughter's wide, swirling eyes. "Are you okay? Did anything happen? What do you remember?" "Remember?" Emily frowned, crinkling her nose adorably. "I was just playing. I found coloring books." And in that moment, terror flickered in Sarah's chest. Had the darkness warped Emily's memories? Would it return to claim them both when they least expected? She shook her head, dispelling the thoughts that twisted like the shadows that had pursued them so doggedly. "Mommy, can we go outside? I want to show you what I made," Emily pleaded, pulling at her sleeve. "Of course, sweetie," Sarah managed, rising to her feet, but her heart raced. They had to be careful. The veil of safety still felt thin. Before stepping outside, she glanced back at the hallway, the air still thick with memories of the dark realm they had narrowly escaped. Could that place curl its fingers around them again? As they stepped into the sunlight, vibrant greens surrounded them, flowers blooming proudly in the garden filled with color anew. The sky overflowed with brilliant blue. Everything felt deceptively sweet, and yet Sarah's gut twisted with uncertainty. "Noah? Mike?" she called out tentatively, scanning the yard for any signs of life. "Where are you?" Emily giggled, oblivious to her mother's worry as she danced around the garden, checking beneath every bush and flower. And then, like a cold shiver, dread washed over her when a realization struck. They ignored the whispers from the previous nights, the warnings that had darkened every corner of her mind. Did she dare to continue looking for them? The choice felt weighty, pulling at her heart. "Stay close," she urged Emily, moving forward cautiously, searching each shadow, each flicker. But nothing stirred. Silence loomed heavily, amplifying the tension. Where was Noah? Where were the neighbors? Had the darkness taken them too? What if they were lost in the very place she'd fled? As doubt crept back in, the air shifted, a sudden chill wrapping around Sarah. The garden felt still, the laughter that once filled her heart now drifted like smoke. "No," she breathed out, her heart racing, memories of the darkness resurfacing. "Mommy, I'm tired. Can we go back inside?" Emily implored, breaking her trance. "All right, baby, let us go." Sarah breathed deep, steeling herself. As they stepped back through the doorframe, that warmth radiated around them once more, almost protective. But then, a shadow flickered through the corner of her vision. Just a trick of the light, she invoked the ghosts of her fears. She shook it off, promising herself to stay calm. They were free now. But just as she turned, soft laughter intertwined with the whispering wind, a chorus that wrapped around her ankles, teasing playfully. "Emily, for every soul that stumbles into darkness, another is left behind," the echoes whispered, chilling her spine. Sarah's blood ran cold. She couldn't escape, was living in that very curse. The truth gnawed at her. Whatever she had faced, whatever decisions she had made, shadows lurked in wait, veiled everywhere, ever patient, ever hungry. And in that instant of realization, the ground trembled beneath them, laughter morphing into cries that clawed through her heart, and her children's eyes, the pure reflections she had fought to save, stirred inside her. "Stay close, Emily." A sudden storm rippled through the air, and she could feel the darkness extending its claws, warping grace into an insatiable hunger. "I love you," Sarah whispered, as she pulled Emily tightly to her side, determined to fight back. They may find themselves trapped again, but if the darkness returned, she would challenge it to take her first. "Join us," the laughter taunted, seductive, as shadows began to creep from the corners once more. And as Sarah stood firm, defending her family, she knew, without a doubt, that the battle with the darkness was far from over. They might always be dancing on that thin line, a foot between light and shadow, but this time, she wouldn't falter. "Together," she shouted, clutching Emily tightly, "we will fight." And together, they faced the night, ready for whatever lay ahead. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this ending. Show your support, because this is the moment for true fans.